Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Fancy Kickabout podcast with me, Liam Sterling.
And me, Ash Marshall.
And today we have a real treat for you guys with our first ever guest on the podcast. You may not have seen him before, but you've definitely heard him.
Yes, that's right. He's commentated over 500 games for Sky Sports since 2005, ranging between the Premier League, the Championship, Internationals, and even the Champions League, as well as 2 World Cups and the 2016 Euros for TalkSport.
That's right. We are delighted to welcome football commentator Gary Taphouse. How are you today, Gary? You all okay?
Yeah, great. Wow, what a big build-up.
No pressure.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds amazing when you put it like that. It's a lot of work.
Well, it's a great career so far, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, it's amazing how quickly it goes. But yeah, over 500 games for TV. I can't actually believe it when you say it like that. In fact, it's probably over 600 now. And of course, this last year, there's been so much football with every game being live that I've actually been busier than ever. Most TV commentators have. It's just been such a crazy time. So yeah, amazing year in so many ways, but just incredibly busy with so much football on TV.
Yeah, that's true. So how did your journey start in sports commentary then? Was it always something that you wanted to do?
Yeah, always. Well, not from a very young age. The first time I really wanted to make it my career was when I was watching Italia 90, the World Cup, long before your time, guys. That was the first World Cup where I watched every game. It's the first time it really piqued my interest. And we'd even watch the games at school. And I think it's the first time where the commentary really was something that I took notice of. And those guys like, Barry Davis, Brian Moore, Motti, Tony Gubba, they were obviously all working during that tournament. And I just thought, wow, you can actually do this for a living, travel and watch football. And I just thought, well, that's something I really want to do. And yeah, then that coincided with shortly after that. But I was living in South London, and Capital Gold were going big on football with Jonathan Pearce, doing it his own way. Award-winning, totally new way of listening to football, where it was all about fun. And I would listen religiously to that. I just thought he was brilliant, and the guys that worked with him, like Steve Wilson and Rob Watton, and all names that we know in football media. So yeah, just listening to them and recording them and listening back to them, and it just became an obsession, really.
Was there a particular moment, like a particular game or a particular goal that it was commentated on, you thought, I want to be a commentator?
I don't know if there was a particular goal or particular game. I think it was just a general obsession. Because at the time they were doing football but it seemed like they were doing it every night. Obviously, every weekend, midweek games. I would just listen all the time. And I just absolutely loved it. I just thought, again, this doesn't seem like a job. It just seems like everyone's having fun watching football and talking about it. I want to be a part of it.
So your first job in commentary was for AFC Bournemouth, wasn't it, when you was at university? So you were studying journalism. So what was that experience like, realising that this is your first opportunity within this industry that you'd grown to understand was going to be a possible job opportunity for you in the future?
Yeah, well, like most people who get into this business, it's all about luck, really. And I was living with a group of people in my final year. Some of them were doing journalism, some were doing media production. And one of the girls there was going out with an older guy who was a cameraman for a local production company in Bournemouth. And I just happened to overhear him saying that they had got the contract to film every Bournemouth home game. Bournemouth, a much smaller club back then, in the third tier, really struggling financially. The Dean Court didn't look like the Vitality does now. And they said, and I heard him say that the guy they were using for commentary was a vice president of the club. And although he was a really nice guy, he just wasn't very good. And he tended to be extremely biased and abuse referees and all the things you're not supposed to do. So I just nipped in and said, look, hi Paul, that's something I really want to do. Any chance you could give me a go? And he said, well, if you're free on Tuesday, we're doing the Bristol Rovers game. We can't pay you, but yeah, you're welcome to come along and have a go. So yeah, amazing. It was that quick, and so I climbed up the sort of rusty old ladder up to the gantry at Dean Court, and it was literally him with a camera and a mic plugged into the side of it. And of course, I've done hours and hours of prep, and it went okay. It wasn't amazing, but they were happy enough with it, and I ended up doing the whole of that season, and I wrote and presented the end of season video, VHS as it was back in 1997, and it was just amazing experience. I worked really hard at it. And funny enough, the guy that they got rid of, I said to him, look, would you occasionally come and be co-com with me, because it's just an extra voice, and we were literally just passing the microphone back to them. But it worked, and you could order copies of those games to buy and watch, and that end of season video, I went into HMV in Bournemouth and they were selling it. So wow. That really was fantastic.
Brilliant.
I don't think I would have gone on and become a commentator if I didn't have that in the bank, because I had tangible proof that I could do it. I had a whole library of VHS cassettes that people could watch. So yeah, again, enormous bit of luck that fell into my lap. But equally, when you get those bits of good fortune, you've got to take advantage of them.
Absolutely, yeah. Right time, right place, definitely.
Yeah, completely, yeah.
Brilliant. And after Bournemouth, where was your next stepping stone in your career?
Yeah, well, I left uni, and I got a job on my local newspaper in South London, just as a news journalist. It's not what I wanted to do, but it was an opportunity which came along, and they're in South London, so they covered Crystal Palace. So I got to do a bit of sport as well, and I think I'd only been there a few weeks, and we got a fax. This shows how old it is. They got a fax coming through saying Crystal Palace are launching their matchday radio station, Palace Radio, and do you want to come to the launch? Which was, they'd just been promoted to the Premier League, so their first home game was against Blackburn, and I think it was Blackburn. And I went along, and we were in one of the executive boxes, and they had the radio station playing in the box. And I was listening to the commentary thinking, this is, it's passionate, but it could be a lot better. And so I went to the guy that was editing the station, and I said, look, I've got some experience with Bournemouth. I haven't done any radio, but any chance of giving it a go? And he said, okay, why don't you come along to the next home game against Chelsea? And we'll see how it goes. So exactly the same situation. Obviously, totally new to me. I've been listening to radio for so long, but I'd never actually done it. And I was shocked at how much talking you had to do. They queued to me for the start of the game, and I'd written a bit of a script. I did have a co-com actually, but I finished my script, and the players had only just come out, and I just stopped talking. And they were saying in my ear, Gary, keep talking. You can't just stop talking. So yeah, I learned very quickly that you've just got to keep going. But it was brilliant, and it went okay. And I ended up doing several seasons of that actually, of doing every Palace home game, and learning all about radio, because I was in the studio as well sometimes. So I was learning some really important skills there. And obviously, I was bumping into other people in the press box. And I got talking to the guys from Capital Gold, people that I've been listening to for years. And eventually I got an opportunity to report on a game for them. And that was just a dream come true. As I say, I was listening religiously to that. And I'd been listening to Jonathan Pearce for years. And they sent me to Fulham in the first round of the FA Cup, Fulham against Northampton, I think it was, and I actually had Jonathan Pearce queuing to me for updates, and I just couldn't believe it was happening. It was just, I think I was paid about 30 quid for doing it, but it was just such a thrill. And it went okay again, and they gave me some more games. And then because I'd been doing Palace, an opportunity came up to do the Palace games for them. So again, another step up, not commentating, but reporting and doing interviews. And, every time Palace were playing, I was there. So amazing experience. And it just led on from there. It took a long time for me to actually get a full-time wage in football broadcasting, because those opportunities don't come along very, very often. I'd left the newspaper. I was working for Opta, the stats people, who back then it was a very, very small company. I think we only had about half a dozen employees. So I was in from the bottom there as well, doing lots of writing, and then working for Capital at the weekends. So that was amazing. And then an opportunity came up at Chelsea. I saw it in the Media Guardian. They were launching digital radio stations at Chelsea, Southampton, and Derby, and Aston Villa. So four clubs they worked with and launched radio stations based at stadiums. And an opportunity came up at Chelsea to be a reporter, and it was a full-time job. So I left Opta, took that job, and actually within a few months, for various reasons, I've been moved up to do the commentary. So I then spent several years doing every game, home and away, with Kerry Dixon for radio, and that included Champions League. So we were going off to Barcelona and everywhere with the team. Then obviously the club was sold to Abramovich, and Jose Mourinho came in, and I was there for all of that. I was there in the boardroom when all those players were signing. So it was unbelievable experience.
Yeah.
And obviously, again, just like before, because I was at every Chelsea game, I was chatting to all these other commentators and getting to know them. And again, that coincided with Sky launching Football First, which is now Match Choice, where they needed commentators at every 3:00 Saturday game. And so I spoke to Martin Tyler and Rob Hawthorne, who I knew because I'd been seeing them on a regular basis. And they said, oh, yeah, well, the producer's this guy, get in touch with him. And I badgered him for months and months. And eventually they put in a word for me. And so all of that long road led me up to, I think I was 28, 29. And Sky gave me my first game, which was Fulham against Manchester City at Craven Cottage. And I was with Nigel Spackman, and I just thought, wow, finally, here I am doing a TV game. It's taken all these years, but yeah, no, I was finally there, and that was just the most unbelievable experience. Obviously, I was only freelance doing the odd game, so I was still working at Chelsea as well and combining the two.
Now here you are.
And now here I am, 15 years later, I'm still doing it. So yeah,
you're on the Fancy Kick About podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just want to scale back a little bit. I just feel like we missed quite an important part of your career, and especially from what our listeners and viewers will want to hear about is the time at Chelsea, to be essentially behind the scenes of the takeover of the young Jose Mourinho era. What was that like? What was the atmosphere like at Chelsea Football Club back then?
Well, it was amazing because we were on air 24 hours a day. Obviously, a lot of the music was automated, but we had a breakfast show and a drive show, and we had Chelsea bulletins throughout the day and every game live. So to be right in the thick of it was just amazing. And obviously, we had unfettered access to the training ground and everything because we were based at the club. It wasn't actually a club radio station, but obviously they had a vested interest in it. So that was incredible, to be there when all those players signed, starting with, Glenn Johnson came in, and then he was followed by Damien Duff and Wayne Bridge and Juan Sebastian Veron, and, the name just got bigger and bigger, Joe Cole. And we did first interviews with all of those guys. So really amazing. I got to know them all. Obviously, I had to speak to them post-match as well. So, that was a fantastic experience. My main thing was commentating, but obviously to have that as well, to be doing those interviews and
yeah,
and just being part of that excitement. You know, I'm not a Chelsea fan, but you know, you could really sense that major things were happening. And obviously they were qualifying for the Champions League and going for the title, and we were there for all of that. So yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing. And you know, I got to go to a Champions League final in Moscow. You know, an incredible experience. The semi-final win at Highbury against Arsenal, but all those big matches against Liverpool. You know, I was at all of those games. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience, really was.
Brilliant. And what is Jose Mourinho like?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously he was there for 2 spells, and I wasn't there for the second spell, but I was there for all of his first spell, and I was very lucky. I got on with him really, really well. He understood the importance of not just external media, but internal media as well, as a way of getting the message out to the fans. So Chelsea had Chelsea TV, and they had us, and he would always speak to us. Both separately. Occasionally, if he was in a bad mood, he might make us do them both together. But most of the time, we did them separately. And he was brilliant. He really was. I think, funny enough, I only tweeted yesterday, there was a interview with him after the Carling Cup final defeat. And it's a very different Jose Mourinho. It's a very much... you hang on every word, because there's that arrogance there, but you know, just brilliant to listen to. And certainly the most engaging, charismatic interviews I did were with him during that first spell at Chelsea. So yeah, I found him brilliant to work with. Yes, of course he had an ego and he was arrogant, but he was always very, very good to me. I'm happy to say.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
It's amazing stuff, amazing insight. Obviously, as you said, when you got that job at Sky, your first game was Fulham versus Manchester City alongside Nigel Spackman. What was going through your head with that first game? You know, did it feel like this was the real moment where you'd got your foot in the door with regards to commentary? This was going to be your career now. What was going through your head?
So I remember about half an hour before kickoff, I thought, I'm going to be sick because I was so nervous. I just thought, you know, all that hard work has basically led to this moment, and if I mess this up, you know, that could be it. That could be it over. So yeah, no, I remember I wasn't sick, but I was very nearly sick. I was so nervous. I was so terrified, because also, when you do those commentaries for those match choice games, it's not just the game. You actually go on air to nearly 200 countries about 10 minutes before kickoff, and you've got a lot to do before the game even starts. And I obviously hadn't done a single game, so I'd watched how it all works when someone else is doing it, but I hadn't done it myself. So I just wanted to get that first 10 minutes out of the way as well. I wasn't too worried necessarily about the comms, because that's what I do. But obviously, paramount in my mind was, I've just been doing all these years of radio. I've got to not talk as much as I have been doing, and you know, that takes time. And I certainly wouldn't be able to watch those early games I did now, because I think I've just cringed so much. It's the sort of job commentating is where you only get better by doing it, and there's no shortcuts, and you know, you will make mistakes, and you'll learn on the job basically. So I couldn't watch anything sort of pre 2010, I don't think, without really cringing.
Brilliant. And World Cup, was that quite a pinnacle moment in your career that you thought, I've made it, or did you feel like you was on top of the world when you was commenting at the World Cup?
Well, the first World Cup I went to actually was in South Africa in 2010. I wasn't commentating. I was working for Budweiser. Just a really random job I did. They got in touch with me on LinkedIn and said, we're doing a reality show at the World Cup where we're taking one person from every country and throwing them into like a Big Brother house. But no, you can see the clips on YouTube. It's called Bud House, and yeah, it was absolutely amazing. They basically took over this resort just outside Cape Town, And I was there as as a football expert, so I was going to the games in Cape Town, but I also did the voiceovers on the videos. And yeah, I was there for 6 weeks. It was an amazing job. But yeah, obviously I'd rather have been there commentating. It would have been amazing. But it was a very nice holiday, a paid holiday basically. The World Cup that I covered for Talk, yeah, brilliant. I mean, I got to work with some fantastic people. Mick McCarthy, great co-com to work with. Absolutely. Ray Wilkins, who I've worked with at the Euros just before that, amazing guy. Just some brilliant people, and there's some fantastic professionals working at TalkSport who for them it's a labour of love, and the amount of work that goes into a big tournament like that is unbelievable. And I really enjoyed it. I actually did 2 World Cups and the Euros for them, and great experience.
So you commentated on Euro 2016. What was that like, being an English commentator? Obviously, we know the events that happened at that Euro tournament. Was that something that maybe concerns you, going over there and commentating on behalf of England, I suppose, and seeing the way that tournament was carried out?
To be honest, you're just entirely focused on the games you're doing, and when you're doing a tournament like that, the games come so quickly because there's, in the group stage, there's games every single day, and you basically do a game, forget about it, and move on to the next one. So I think when you're covering a tournament like that, and in many ways a bit like it is this season, you're just so focused on the matches that everything else is kind of a side issue. And of course, I was doing those tournaments just as a commentator. I wasn't there as a reporter or a news guy, and they had other people doing all that. So for me, it was just about the football and the matches, and just trying to do the best job I could, because to cover those big tournaments is just a massive privilege.
It's really interesting stuff. Obviously, going on to the way football has sort of grown now, and the implications of VAR. Do you feel that maybe your job as a commentator has been affected by VAR? Obviously, is it sort of a hindrance to your ability to articulate games now?
Yeah, funnily enough, I've had a few people asking me about this for dissertations and stuff, because I think it's really interesting. VAR has had a big impact on the job of a commentator, for sure. The first thing to say is, actually, in most games, VAR is irrelevant, because actually the number of times VAR gets involved in and looks to change a decision is quite low. So most games you'll do, yes, VAR's checking things all the time, but you're not really aware of it. What happens is the major decisions where it does change, that's amplified so much that we get a bit of a skewed view of VAR a little bit. How it works for us is we do have a VAR monitor, and sometimes we can hear not the referee, the VAR. So we do get an insight into what's happening with decisions. And sometimes we will get a good idea of whether a penalty is going to be given or not before it shows on the big screen. But the biggest thing that's changed for me is if you go really big on a goal in the commentary, there's always a risk it's going to be chalked off.
Yeah.
And you can feel a bit mugged off as a commentator. And I think there have been a few occasions where perhaps all of us have been a little bit less excited for a goal, just in case someone's half a millimetre offside, or there's an unintentional handball in the build-up. So I think it has affected our job a little bit. I think there's still work to do with VAR, for sure. I think one area where we could improve it maybe is to have dedicated referees at games and dedicated VAR referees, because at the moment they do chop and change. One week they'll be at a match, the next week they'll be at Stockley Park. I think they're two very different skills, actually. So we could definitely look at that. And obviously the Premier League will look at it every season and say, well, how can we make that better? minimum interference, maximum benefit. That's what we were promised, and I don't think we're getting that at the moment.
Yeah, it's such a huge talking point. I mean, we talk about it every week on the podcast at the moment, and
we don't want that, do we? We don't,
No, we don't. We really don't.
About VAR all the time.
No, it's a nightmare. It's interesting what you say, that you actually can hear what they're saying at Stockley Park. Do you think something like that would benefit us fans watching it at home to see or hear the referee like they do in Australia?
Yeah, and obviously in Australia you don't get it live. They release the audio after the game. But it does help you when they're analysing the post-match. It obviously helps everyone to understand how they've arrived at a decision. All I'd say is I don't think it would stop the backlash towards referees just because we can hear what they say. If you don't agree with the decision, you won't agree with how they've arrived at the decision either.
Yeah.
I think the PGMOL quite rightly wants to protect referees, and I think they get way too much abuse. For Mike Dean to have a death threats, I mean, for goodness sake, get a live people. It's a football match, So, listen, I don't have the answers. I don't know what the long-term solutions are to all of these issues. But what I do know is that there's a lot of people who are working to improve it, and there'll be changes for next season, bound to be. I think what we want is, at the moment, I just think it's too negative. It's trying to find ways of chalking goals off. And that's, as fans, that's not what we want. We want to see goals. So, we don't want to see a really good goal chalked off because someone's big toe is offside. And is the technology accurate enough to tell us with 100% certainty that big toe is offside? So there's a lot of questions for me. I'm still pro technology because I think there's so much at stake. And we have had too many massive cock-ups, which have been a grotesque injustice in the game. So if we can find the right balance, then I think technology does have a big part to play. But I don't think we've got the balance quite right at the moment.
No. So are you VAR in if we can get it right?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I always have been.
Perfect.
It's interesting. It's interesting what you said about like your career. You wouldn't sit back and listen to the games from 2010 and previous. You might be a bit cringed out, and that over time your career as a commentator you have to build up. It's something that you improve on over time, and it's similar with VAR. Like over time, it will improve, and the more we use it, the more we understand it, the better it will get. So there's similar sort of parallels in the way that those.
Well, yeah. Let's learn from other leagues, because everyone's bringing it in. MLS did it for a couple of years before we did, and obviously I worked on MLS for those 2 years, and it always seemed to me that it's much less intrusive there, and I think people that cover the Bundesliga say the same. So let's learn from how they do it. Let's improve it. Let's try and make it better. The Premier League was adamant that they didn't want the refs to go and look at the monitors initially because they thought it was going to take too much time. And I think, we learned quite quickly that actually that we want the referee on the pitch to make the final decision. So let's try and improve it. Let's do our best to try and improve it. I think it's easy to just say, oh, let's just scrap it. I think people forget how many injustices there were pre-VAR. We want to try and cut them out.
One that always sticks in my mind would probably be Lampard's goal.
Well, exactly.
In the 2010 World Cup. That if we have VAR there, then we go on.
But in fairness, that's actually a goal line technology issue, isn't it? And we obviously sorted that out before VAR. That's a Hawkeye issue. But you're right. That's the sort of thing that we want to eradicate from the game because the stakes are so high, and that's something we'll never get over as England fans. I was in South Africa for that one, and I can still remember the feeling of simmering anger which lingered for so long after that.
Try not to swear live on TV.
Well, I know I wasn't commentating. I was just there. I was just watching it as a fan, thinking this is horrendous. This can't be allowed to go on.
Yeah, it's a moment unfortunately us England fans will never forget. In terms of you on a general basis, like daily basis, say you've got Brighton versus Leicester at the weekend. How does a normal day in preparation look for you in terms of getting ready for the game?
Well, when I'm not doing podcasts like this, I would be sitting at my laptop for a good 6 hours, going through all the tedious reams of stats and bits of information, 80% of which I probably won't need or use, but you've got to have everything there just in case. That's the bit about being a commentator I really don't like, is the hours and hours and hours of prep, which is so important to the game. You know, particularly though this season I've started doing live championship games with Sky, and even I did a League One game last month as well. And obviously, not watching those teams every week, there's even more work involved there. Particularly when, you know, a lot of those games, most of the viewers watching will be fans of those clubs, and so you owe it to them to have as much knowledge as you can of the two teams involved. So, I mean, how I prepare has perhaps changed as time's gone on. I will now always listen to a podcast from the teams involved to try and get some fans' perspective. So we're not just getting a sort of sanitized club view of what's going on the pitch. But yeah, with Sky, we're very lucky. We get a stat pack for every game, which they've got a team of fantastic guys at Sky who work incredibly hard to get that information to us, and then I condense that down to what I need. And obviously, I do a bit of my own as well, so that I've got some bits and bobs that I put the work in for. But equally, when I'm commentating, I don't like to be too stat heavy, because as a viewer, I find it quite annoying. Again, that's something that I've learned over time. I actually talk less and less and less as time goes on, because when we're fans at matches, we don't have some irritant describing everything. You know, we're there to enjoy it as supporters. So, you know, I try and bear that in mind when I'm on air, and not just patronize people by describing every single pass, and, you know, just keep it to the important bits. And you know, that's something that the really experienced commentators, that sort of wisdom they've imparted to me down the years. John Champion has said that to me many times. He'll say, you know, I talk less than most commentators, because, you know, only speak when you've actually got something to say that's going to enhance the broadcast. And I think when you're a young commentator, you think, well, I'm being paid to talk, so I need to talk. And I think you know, that's something that you learn as you get older.
Do you feel that maybe you need to have a certain voice for commentary? Because obviously sometimes the commentators you remember the most, they have such recognisable voices. Like, for instance, John Motson. Every time I hear him, I know straight away that's Motty. Do you feel that maybe the best commentators have to have that sort of uniqueness to the way that they sound?
I think it helps if you've got a really good voice, for sure. Anyone can do vocal training. Anyone can make their voice better for broadcasting. I think, you know, there's a lot of guys in the industry who've worked on minimizing their accents sometimes. It's a difficult one, that, because I don't want to feel anyone's excluded from being a commentator. I think, you know, obviously you want to have a good voice, but you can work on that. You know, I've certainly worked on mine over the years. Like I said, if I listen to some of the early stuff, I just think, I sound young, but I feel my voice has changed. My voice has changed over the years. So I think it definitely helps if you have got a really good broadcasting voice, but you can work on it.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think that's one of the main things. People tend to worry, like you say, if you don't maybe have this big bellowing voice, people think, well, that's maybe not a route that I can go down. But like you said, if it's something you can work on, and people trying to minimise their accents, I think that if you're able to just embrace the way that you sound, the way that you talk, as long as you're good at your job, and I think that's obviously one of the main things is ensuring that your knowledge as a commentator and your ability, like you say, you don't want to.
That's paramount. But I mean,
yeah.
I think, you know, I don't feel that I have a different voice when I'm broadcasting, but weirdly, my kids will say to me, is that you? Because they don't actually recognise my voice on air from the one that talks to them. Now, I don't feel that I do anything differently, but maybe I do subconsciously project a bit more. I don't know. And and even friends who don't watch football very often will listen to me and say, I just don't even think that sounds like you. So I think, again, that's just something that's been honed over the years by holding a microphone.
Well, moving on to the next stages of your career, I suppose, and something a bit different from commentary. Obviously, you do lecturing at UCFB. With match commentary courses for first-year students. So how did that initially come about? How were you approached by the university in regards to that?
Gosh, that's a good question. It was a bit out of the blue, actually. Colleague of mine, John Roeder, who works on Match of the Day, I think he was initially asked about it, but he lives down in Devon, so it wasn't really practical for him to come backwards and forwards to Wembley. And he got in touch with me and said, because at the time I was living in Surrey, and he said, "Is this something that might interest you?" And he put me in touch with them, and they said to me, "Look, we want to do maybe 8 sessions just on match commentary. Would you be able to put something together? Send us over your ideas, and we'll take it from there." So I did. I put together a schedule which I devised myself. They liked the look of it, and we gave it a go. I think the first year I did was 2016. God, time flies. And in fact, I now come across guys that I was working with back then who are now in the industry, and it's amazing how well they've done and how quickly time goes. But no, I really enjoy it because it's not something I do to make money. I do make a bit out of it, but that's not why I do it. It's just a really good opportunity to talk to young people coming through who want to get into that field, and to see how passionate they are, what sort of thing they want to go into, see if I can help them, basically. And I'm happy that I have been able to guide people along the way. So it's been something I've really enjoyed, and obviously this year has been very difficult with the pandemic, but we're doing it over Zoom starting this month. Actually, the first years who I'd normally have spoken to in September and beyond, we're doing it in March and April. So I've never done it over Zoom before. Let's see how it goes. And if they're anything like my son, who's a teenager in secondary school, then no one will have their cameras on. They all just sit there, and I'm going to insist that everyone's camera's on, so I don't know how popular I'll be.
The new normal of living life over Zoom, unfortunately. What is the best piece of advice you'd give to any young aspiring commentators out there?
Well, it's all about proving that you've got what it takes to do it. So in a pandemic, it's very, very difficult to get that experience because access has become very difficult, and obviously non-league clubs, a lot of them aren't playing, or they're very much restricting who can get near them. But the key is, like I did with Bournemouth, is to find a way to show that you can do it. And even if that just means recording yourself and overlaying some crowd noise, or just something that you can send to someone to say, "This is me commentating," because like I say, the only way you can get better is by doing it, but people need to see proof that you've got what it takes. So approach non-league clubs, many of them are putting stuff on YouTube, games on YouTube. Try and shadow people who do it every week. Again, at the moment, that's not possible, but when and if things do return to normal, I've had people sit with me before who've been trying to get that experience. It's not easy, it's a niche job, really, and it's not easy at all. But listen, there's always commentators needed. There's more football out there than ever before. So, and also the industry really wants to diversify. They want to see more women commentators. We need more BAME commentators. So, and I think football, especially, is really trying to work hard on that. So, I would encourage everyone, if you are interested, don't, just do as much as you can to prove that you can do the job.
Brilliant, brilliant. We did ask our Twitter followers if they have got any specific questions for you.
Okay.
And now that you are on the podcast, it'd be silly not to ask them. It's questions that me personally, I want to know as well. But at show_Shay has asked, what is the favourite match you've ever commentated on?
Wow, that's a tough one. I mean, there's some that immediately spring to mind. I was very lucky back in 2007. I hadn't been doing it long. Sky sent me to Portsmouth Reading, which was probably intended to be a game that was going to be well down the list, and it ended up being 7-4.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It's still the highest scoring game in Premier League history. So that one obviously springs to mind. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube. I can't get past the first couple of minutes because, again, it's such a long time ago. My voice has changed. My commentating style has changed. But yeah, I did that game with Warren Barton, and Warren's now working in the States, doing a fantastic job. But I've always got that with him. There was the Tottenham Wigan game. I always get asked about when they put 9 past Wigan at White Hart Lane, and Jermaine Defoe scored 5 times. Always get asked about that one. But also it's the ones where there's late drama. I think that's what the Premier League does so well. There was I've got a bit of a reputation for doing 6-pointers in the relegation end of the table, and there was one. There was a West Brom game. Gosh, I can't even remember the exact details of it, but it was 3-3 right at the end. There were 2 goals in stoppage time at the end of the game. It was West Brom Cardiff. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was at Cardiff.
Wow.
And it was 2-2 going into stoppage time. Then West Brom made it 3-2 and thought they'd won it. And then Cardiff went up the other end and scored again. It was just, absolute carnage. And funny enough, that game I did the other night, the Rotherham game, when they won in stoppage time with 10 men, things like that will always stay in your mind because that's just the drama of football encapsulated. So they're the ones that I would probably say off the top of my head.
Okay, perfect. At James Mould _ has asked, who is your favourite commentary partner?
Well, that's a hard one because
it's a harsh one.
Yeah, it is because I've worked with so many. It must be getting on for 100 now over the years, and there's been none that I've thought, I don't want to work with him again. The one guy who I've worked with so many times over the last 20 years is Tony Gale. He's a mate of mine, but he did many years in radio with Capital before going into TV, so he understands the job so well. He's probably the only one I know who would turn up at a game at the last minute because someone had dropped out for whatever reason, and you wouldn't know the difference because he's just such a professional in terms of broadcasting. I know, the thing with co-coms and commentators, it's so subjective. What someone likes, someone else dislikes. I just feel that from a tactical and analytical point of view, and also understanding the mix of broadcasting, he's right up there. David Provan, another one, absolutely superb analyst. But all of them, I've worked a lot with Lee Henry recently, and he's a new commentator who's come into the business and really wants to learn and get better. And he's really done the work with games with all these managers and some players beforehand. So I think the ones that do put the work in and put the pressure in are always going to be the best ones for me.
Perfect. And the last question was the most wow moment when commentating. So I think what James means by that is, has there been a goal or a specific piece of skill or something that's happened in the game that's made you just think, oh, wow, I can't believe that has just happened?
Well, again, I think the one I'm always asked about is the Dele Alli goal in the Palace Spurs game.
Yeah.
Good goal. 5 years ago now. I mean, time flies. But yeah, I mean, that one was goal of the season. Just came completely out of the blue, and I'm always asked about that. Funny enough, the Premier League channel did a feature on Dele Alli recently, and they sent someone down to my house to interview me just about that goal because it was such an iconic moment. There was another one going further back when Matthew Taylor was at Portsmouth and he scored on the halfway line.
Yeah,
I was at that one as well, and that was an amazing moment. So, yeah, there've been a fair few, but they're probably the two that would spring to mind straight away.
Brilliant. Over to you, Liam.
Yeah, well, so for those of you that don't know, Gary is very good at finding and posting jobs all across the sports media industry, not just commentary. There's all sorts of jobs out there. So if you are interested or want to keep an eye out on maybe some jobs that he'll be posting, not working for him, sadly enough, but definitely ones available out there that, for people, if they want to get their foot in the door in the sports media industry, then definitely keep an eye on his social channels, namely Twitter at Gary Taphouse. But yeah, I think
my followers follow me for jobs.
Well, at least there's a nice little follow in there for something. But no, thank you, Gary. I think we've both, me and Ash have both had a really good time talking with you. Some really interesting stuff and interesting insight into your job as a commentator and the life at Sky Sports as well. So thank you very much for joining us.
Well, it's great. I get to talk about my favourite subject, me.
Great
to talk to you guys. Thanks so much. Best of luck with the podcast.
Thank you. Cheers.
Perfect. Cheers, Gary. All the best.